On May 14, 1948, a new state was declared on land that was already home to millions of Palestinians. Overnight, Israel was created, and Palestine was erased from the map. This single day changed the destiny of an entire people. The creation of Israel in 1948 didn't come out of nowhere. To understand that day, we need to look back to 1917, the year of the Balfour Declaration. This was a letter from Britain's Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, promising support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. At that time, Palestine was still under Ottoman rule, and the overwhelming majority of its population, over 90%, were Palestinian Arabs, both Muslims and Christians, who had lived on the land for centuries. The local people were never asked, never consulted. Their future was being decided without their voice. After World War I, Britain took control of Palestine under the Mandate system. Waves of Jewish immigrants began arriving, especially during the 1930s and 1940s, fleeing persecution in Europe. For Palestinians, this was not a conflict with desperate refugees, but with powerful colonial powers and organized Zionist militias who were preparing to take their land. Tensions escalated with violence, strikes, and uprisings as Palestinians fought to preserve their homes and sovereignty. Then came 1947. The United Nations, under heavy influence from Britain, the US, and other powers, voted on the partition plan. It proposed dividing Palestine into two states, one Jewish, one Arab. The problem? Palestinians made up 2/3 of the population, but the plan gave most of the land, 55%, to the Jewish minority. For Palestinians, this vote felt like betrayal on a global stage. Their homeland, their villages, their future was being sliced apart by foreign hands. And this is where I need to pause. Because what you're hearing right now isn't just history. It's the story of a people who lost everything in plain sight of the world. If you believe this story deserves to be heard, then sharing this video and following this channel isn't just supporting content, it's standing with Palestine. On May 14, 1948, the world witnessed a moment that would forever change the Middle East. In Tel Aviv, David Ben-Gurion stood before a crowd and declared the establishment of the State of Israel. For Zionists, this was the fulfillment of a dream, a homeland after centuries of exile and persecution. But for Palestinians, it was the beginning of a nightmare. The declaration was made just one day before the British Mandate officially ended. There was no referendum, no input from the native majority of the land. In a single speech, Ben-Gurion announced sovereignty over territory where most inhabitants were Palestinians, effectively erasing their political voice. As Jews celebrated in the streets, Palestinians watched in disbelief. Many knew what was coming: displacement, war, and exile. The world framed it as independence, but Palestinians experienced it as dispossession. What was hailed as a birth by one side was felt as a death by the other, the death of their homeland as they had always known it. This was not just a declaration of a new state. It was the declaration of a new reality, one in which an entire people would soon be forced into statelessness. The Declaration of Israel on May 14, 1948, was met with very different reactions across the world. Western powers, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, quickly recognized the new state. For them, this was a geopolitical move, a foothold in the Middle East. But for the Arab world and for Palestinians themselves, it was a declaration of disaster. Arab leaders warned that creating Israel on Palestinian land without the consent of its native people was a recipe for conflict. Within hours, neighboring Arab armies entered Palestine, claiming to defend the indigenous population. Yet by then, Zionist militias had already been carrying out military campaigns for months. Villages were bombarded, families driven out, and thousands fled in fear. For Palestinians, this moment was not about borders or politics. It was about survival. Over 750,000 people were expelled or forced to flee during what became known as the Nakba, the catastrophe. Entire towns were emptied. Generations would grow up in refugee camps, holding keys to homes they were never allowed to return to. While Israel celebrated independence, Palestinians mourned the destruction of their homeland. It was the same day, May 14, 1948, but two entirely different realities. One nation was born. Another was shattered. The day Israel was declared wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was the day an entire people were torn from their homeland, For Palestinians, May 14th, 1948 is not remembered as independence, but as catastrophe, the beginning of exile and endless struggle. So if you believe the truth of Palestine should never be buried, share this video so more people see what really happened. And follow this page because every view, every share, every voice adds to a movement that refuses to let history be rewritten.